Well, the government has pledged $4 million for a new Holocaust memorial and education centre. Anthony Albanese and Peter Dutton will mark the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. The ceremony is set to take place in Perth on Monday. The Prime Minister says Australia has zero tolerance for anti-Semitism. This follows a national escalation in attacks on Jewish communities, their homes, cars and synagogues. Well, as mentioned, tomorrow will mark the 80th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. For more, joining me live is Australian Jewish Association CEO Robert Gregory. Robert, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. Now, you have a close connection to this day, as your grandmother was in Auschwitz. What emotions does this anniversary bring up for you?
Well, Holocaust remembrance always bring up complicated emotions. Obviously, it's a deeply sad day for our family, for the Jewish people, and it's a sad day for the world of what would have been. But it's also a day where I remember my grandmother. She was just 16 when she was sent to Auschwitz. Her mother, her sister were killed, and my grandmother, she wrote a book, a memoir of her experiences, where in Auschwitz, she traded the scraps of paper for scraps of food so she could write down poems, and it's been published. So at least we have that about her story.
And of course, are we forgetting the lessons that we learned 80 years ago, or do you think we have learned those lessons today?
Sadly, it does seem that at least many people are forgetting those lessons. The rise in anti-Semitism around the world, the demonization of the Jewish people, of the Jewish state, it's shocking. No one would have thought it could happen. But many things are different now as well. There is a Jewish state. In the 1940s, the Jewish people were alone and nobody came to save them. And things are very different now in that regard, at least.
This is likely to be the last major anniversary with such a large group of survivors. How can we best preserve the memory of what happened going forward when there are one day in the near future no living witnesses?
I think it's very important that whoever is interested educates themselves. It's important to know what happened, both to know for history and to be able to prevent such things. So there are many books, many survivors have written memoirs. People should read that. And as a society, we should make sure that children learn this in the curriculum at an age-appropriate level, learn what happened, learn how to prevent it, and the dangers of where anti-Semitism leads to.
You touched on this briefly a little bit earlier, but what's your reaction to the rise in anti-Semitism that we've seen in general across the world, but here in Australia, and the recent attacks that we've seen across parts of New South Wales and Victoria?
Never in my life did I expect to experience the anti-Semitism that we have in Australia. It's shocking. Every week, more often sometimes, there's a terrible incident, whether it's a synagogue firebombed, a preschool firebombed. It's just shocking. And equally shocking has been the government's inaction. They've taken so long, they've refused to take action, and it seems like they're being dragged kicking and screaming to actually do something about what's happening across Australia. Jewish people are scared here.
And as we just mentioned earlier, the government has pledged $4 million for a new Holocaust memorial and also an education centre. Does there need to be more done on education around this area as well as stamping out that anti-Semitism?
I think these things are important. Education, it's obviously important, and remembering the Holocaust so we can learn from it is very important. But equally important is there has to be no hatred against Jewish people and hatred against the Jewish state. So on the one hand, the government is pledging money to Holocaust memory, and on the other hand, Penny Wong and some of the ministers are inciting tensions and inflaming tensions by obsessively attacking the Jewish state. And I think both of these are areas that need to be worked on.
And are you hopeful that the ceasefire that we have at the moment will hold and that we'll start to see that downturn in anti-Semitism here in Australia?
I'm hopeful, but I think, unfortunately, it looks like something's been unleashed in society and it doesn't seem like it's going anywhere. Some of these attacks have happened since the ceasefire has been in, so I'm not sure the two are that connected, but nobody wants to see Middle East conflicts playing out on the streets of Sydney or Melbourne or anywhere in Australia. It's just inappropriate. People need to keep conflicts out of Australia.
Absolutely. Robert Gregory, thank you so much for your time this evening.